The wind whispered through the narrow alleys of Nordvest, one of the quieter districts of Copenhagen, where winter arrived early and lingered longer than it was welcome. Snow clung to the rooftops like forgotten sheets, and breath turned to fog with every word spoken. It was on one of those breathless December evenings that Sophie Rasmussen stepped off the number 5C bus, her boots crunching against the salted pavement. She was used to the cold. Born and raised in Jutland, she had known the harsh kind of weather that chiseled your bones and dulled your sense of time. But this was different. This wasn't just winter, it was something heavier. Something pressing against the skin like guilt. Sophie had moved to Copenhagen to study sociology, but found herself increasingly detached from university life. Her lectures felt distant, abstract. What changed everything was a leaflet at the local cafe. Volunteer at Refugee Center. Immediate help needed. She didn't hesitate. It wasn't bravery, it was curiosity, a yearning to witness something real. The shelter, housed in an old school building near Bispebjerg, had become her second home. It wasn't glamorous. Peeling paint on the walls. Fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. But inside those cold walls, human stories unraveled, each more fragile than the last. That night, her shift began at 6. She signed in, greeted by a thin smile from Anna, the center's night supervisor. "Quiet so far," Anna murmured, though her eyes suggested otherwise. Sophie entered the common hall, where children were gathered around a broken television playing cartoons in Arabic. Most of them didn't speak Danish. Some barely spoke at all. That's when she saw him. Alone near the emergency exit, a boy no older than 9 sat hunched on a bench. His coat was too large, his face half hidden beneath a knitted beanie. But what caught her attention were the bruises, deep violet marks along his jawline and a cut across his eyebrow, still raw. She approached cautiously, her tone soft. "Hi, I'm Sophie. Do you speak Danish? Or English?" No reply. The boy kept his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. She noticed then that he was trembling. Not from the cold. This was something else. She sat beside him without pressing further, letting the silence settle between them. After a minute, he whispered something. "A name." "Adam." His voice was dry, almost like paper. Sophie nodded, repeating it gently. "Adam." The name hung in the air, fragile as frost. Adam finally looked up. His eyes, wide, dark and hollow, told her everything she needed to know, and everything she wished she didn't. There was no innocence there, only the hollow aftermath of something already lost. Sophie resisted the urge to ask questions. Children like Adam had their own pace, and rushing only closed doors that were barely open. But then he spoke again. "My father said if I didn't bring food back, he'd lock me in the cupboard again." Her heart clenched. "Where's your father now?" she asked softly. "Gone." That single word carried more weight than a sentence. It wasn't clear if Adam meant his father had left, or something far worse. She wanted to take him somewhere safe, but there was no safer place than this, at least not right now. Anna called her from across the hall. A new intake had just arrived. She stood, reluctant, promising Adam she'd be right back. But as she walked away, she could feel his eyes watching her, silently pleading not to be left alone again. She didn't know it yet, but this boy, this single night, would pull her into a story much darker than anything her textbooks had ever prepared her for. A story that would haunt her long after the snow had melted. The arrival hall smelled faintly of damp wool and disinfectant, the sharp odor of bleach never quite masking the underlying staleness. Sophie eased through the doorway just as 2 paramedics wheeled in a woman wrapped in a gray blanket. Her face was pale, lips blue from the cold. Behind her shuffled a cluster of men, silent, eyes lowered, each carrying all they owned in supermarket bags. Anna gestured for Sophie to help record the names. The intake ledger felt heavy in Sophie's hands, every line a life uprooted. She listened, nodded, wrote, her mind drifting back to the lonely boy on the bench. When she finally returned to the hall, Adam was gone. Panic flared. She scanned rows of makeshift mattresses, the broken television, the vending machine that rarely worked. Nothing. Her pulse hammered. A distant thud echoed from the rear corridor. Sophie hurried towards it, boots slipping on a patch of melted snow. The corridor lights flickered, casting brief shadows that danced along cracked plaster walls. Halfway down, she heard soft whimpering, almost swallowed by the buzz of faulty wiring. She found Adam crouched by a supply cupboard. The door was ajar, and inside lay crates of canned goods. Adam's small hands shook as he tried to lift a tin of beans. He froze when he saw her. "It is for later," he whispered, guilt heavy in every syllable. Sophie knelt beside him. "You do not have to steal food here. We will feed you." He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "If I keep food, I can leave quicker. He will be happy." The pronoun chilled her more than the draft slipping through broken window panes. "Tell me about him," she said, voice low. Adam's fingers tightened around the can. "He locked me where it is dark. I could not breathe. But when I got food, he smiled." Sophie felt the old building tilt, as though his words unbalanced its foundations. She reached for the tin, set it back. "No cupboards here, Adam. Only rooms with lights." He met her eyes then, and for a moment the corridor felt smaller, the world reduced to shared breath and the hum of fluorescent tubes. A sudden shout erupted from the entrance hall. Shuffling footsteps. Raised voices in Danish. Sophie took Adam's hand and hurried back. 2 officers were speaking to Anna. Between them stood a tall man in a worn leather jacket, beard flecked with frost, right arm bandaged. His stare roamed the room until it landed on Adam. Recognition flared, fierce and possessive. Adam stiffened, nails digging into Sophie's palm. The man stepped forward. "My son," he growled, thick accent curling around the words. Anna blocked his path. "We have procedures. Papers first." His lips curled. "I do not need papers for my own blood." Sophie felt Adam tremble. Instinct overruled protocol. She pulled him behind her, positioning herself between father and son. "The boy stays," she said, voice steadier than her heartbeat. The man's eyes narrowed. "You think you can keep him from me?" Officers closed ranks, hands near holstered batons. Tension thick in the air. Then Adam spoke, barely audible. "Please, Sophie, cupboards." The single word cupboards cracked something inside her. She glanced at the bruise beneath his eye, remembered the cupboard door he could not pass without flinching. She addressed the officers. "He is requesting protection. Under Danish child welfare law, you must act before custody can be decided." The taller officer nodded, signaling his partner. They guided the man towards a side office, questions tumbling in muted Danish. The leather jacket smelt of stale alcohol and petrol as he passed, eyes still burning into Sophie. Silence settled once more. Adam clutched Sophie's sleeve. Another bruise, this one invisible, surfacing just beneath the skin of memory. "Come," she whispered, leading him to the infirmary upstairs, away from watchful doors. She did not look back, but she could feel the man's presence lingering, like smoke that seeps into walls long after the flame has died. Tonight, Copenhagen's winter seemed colder than ever, and the refuge Sophie once trusted felt suddenly, perilously porous. The cupboards might be locked here, but darkness still had a key. The infirmary had always been too warm. The radiator hissed like a sleeping serpent, the air heavy with antiseptic. Adam lay curled on the cot, eyes open, staring at the cracked ceiling. Sophie sat beside him, brushing dust from the corner of the blanket. Anna entered quietly, holding a slim manila file. "I found this," she murmured, placing it on the counter. Adam was registered here 2 weeks ago, brought in by the police. Alone. Sophie opened the folder. No school record. No next of kin. A single line scrawled in red ink stood out. Repeat placement. Suspected trauma. Do not separate. "What does it mean?" she asked. Anna's mouth tightened. "He ran before. From another shelter." Sophie glanced at Adam. Did they return him to his father? Anna didn't answer. As Sophie stared at the fragile handwriting, the room seemed to close in. There was more to this story. More than bruises and cupboards. something no file could contain. That night, long after the center fell into uneasy sleep, Sophie crept into the old administrative wing. A key from Anna's ring had quietly disappeared into her coat pocket earlier. The room was dark, dust hanging in the air like forgotten breath. Boxes lined the walls, cases, names, forgotten lives. Her torchlight danced until it landed on one marked Rasmussen Inquiry, Case 147. Her own name, but not hers. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a child's drawing. A door, marked with scratches. A cupboard, bolted from the outside. And beside it, a stick figure with a scribbled face, eyes blacked out. The page was signed, A.R. Adam Rasmussen. She stepped back. The cupboard in his memory wasn't metaphorical. And somehow, impossibly, their names were connected. Sophie's fingers trembled as she tucked the drawing into her coat pocket. The air in the file room had turned thick, soured by the weight of unearthed history. Back in the staff lounge, she searched the digital registry. Her own name, birth date, address. Nothing unusual until she checked the adoption database. A locked result. She hesitated. A few keystrokes bypassed the login wall. She read the screen slowly. Biological sibling, Adam Rashid Rasmussen. Status, concealed. Her knees gave out, and she slid to the floor. She had a brother, and no one had told her. The drawing, the shared surname, the way he looked at her, not just with fear, but with something else. Recognition. The center's old landline rang, slicing through the silence. Anna answered. A pause. Then she waved Sophie over. It's for you. She took the phone. The voice on the other end was low, rasped. You found him. It wasn't a question. I don't know who you are, Sophie whispered. He remembers the cupboard. That's enough. The line went dead. Sophie stood frozen, the receiver cold in her hand. Someone was watching them. And they knew. The next morning brought snowfall, thick and fast. The center remained under gray skies, its courtyard blanketed white. Adam hadn't spoken since waking. Sophie sat by his cot, unsure how to begin. Do you know who I am? She asked. He blinked slowly, then nodded. You're not like him. Who? She asked, heart pounding. Adam looked toward the window. The one who came yesterday. He's not my father. Sophie froze. Then who is he? Adam's voice was barely a whisper. The man from the locked room. Later, she asked Anna about a locked ward. Anna hesitated. There's a storage hall under the west wing. We don't use it anymore. It's not suitable. Sophie waited until the building slept again. She crept down the back stairs, key ring in hand. The hallway reeked of mold and silence. At the end, a heavy iron door. One key fit. The room inside was nearly empty, except for a chair bolted to the floor, and a small wooden cupboard, its door slightly ajar. Scratches covered the inside. She stepped back, horror crawling up her spine. Who had been kept here? And why was it still here? Sophie didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk, drawing the cupboard from memory, placing it beside Adam's crayon sketch. They matched line for line. Morning brought no answers. Adam sat in the dining hall, untouched breakfast in front of him. Other children avoided him now, whispering as they passed. Sophie knelt by his chair. Do you remember the woman who brought you here? Adam shook his head. But I know, she sang. He hummed a melody, flat and sorrowful. Sophie felt her throat tighten. She had heard that song before. From her foster mother. A lullaby passed down without explanation. They shared blood. The pieces were clicking together. But she was terrified of the picture they formed. That night, she returned to the locked room. The cupboard was gone. Only dust marked where it had stood. Someone was removing evidence. And Sophie had the drawing that proved it existed. The next day, Sophie noticed a blue van parked across the street from the center. Unmarked. Engine cold. But it had been there the day before as well. She told Anna, who dismissed it. Police observe sometimes. But it wasn't police. That night, Adam was gone. His mattress still warm, blanket on the floor. A smear of dirt near the back exit. Panic bloomed like frostbite. She ran to the security office. The feed showed a shadow lifting a boy over the fence. Sophie paused the frame. The man wore a leather jacket, and behind him, the blue van's door stood open. Adam had been taken. Again. Sophie traced the van's plate to a farm north of the city, near the edge of Roskilde Fjord. She didn't call the police. She knew they'd arrived too late. Armed with nothing but a torch and the crumpled drawing, she followed the icy trail to a house hunched beneath a canopy of leafless trees. Inside, darkness breathed. Creaking floorboards. A radio playing static. In the basement, she found Adam, tied to the same chair she'd seen in the locked ward. The man from the video turned. "You always come back," he said. Not to Adam. To her. She recognized him now. Not from memory, but from dreams. The face that watched her in childhood nightmares.